Landscapers are really curious and wanting to get in front of landscape architects. Is there anything tactical, strategic tips and tricks that you would suggest? Like, what do people need to execute on well to have the highest possibility of actually landing that meeting for the first time?
If you find somebody that will bring right fit work, there's likely more in common than you just wanting to do their work.
Like, in hindsight, how many millions of dollars of revenue have they plowed through your business, and was all of that not worth it?
Yeah. In the past 10 years, it's probably north of $1 million.
You're watching the LeanScaper Podcast, where landscapers come to grow. If you want the systems, stories, and strategies to build a lean, mission-driven company that your team loves working for, keep watching. Kevin, thanks for coming on the LeanScaper Podcast. It's really good to see you. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Benji. I'm excited for today. It's going to be great.
One thing that you are extremely passionate about, you talk about it from stage, you talk about it in your content. I've overheard you having conversations about this with members at LeanScaper events, is partnerships, in particular being like a really important growth catalyst for landscapers. Why is this such a hot button topic for you? What have they done for your business over the years?
Yeah, I think they can be an underutilized tool. For us at Muskoka Landscapers, they've been massive. The majority of our work is referral, probably 90% of it. And it has been like that for the past 10 years or more. And a lot of that is through partnerships. I think the value in having good partnerships, especially when they work both ways, and I think that's an important thing to mention about partnerships, is they got to work for the other person too. And sometimes in landscaping, we can't contribute as much to them, but there's lots of ways we can add value to their business and how they're supporting us. But I would say the majority of people underutilize partnerships. Just they're difficult to build. They're difficult to build. Sometimes we feel like we're pestering people. When we're trying to make a new connection, it can feel difficult. It can feel, a little bit awkward. But I think the value and the juice in doing it is certainly worth the squeeze.
What do you think that most landscapers get wrong about strategic partnerships and this type of relationship building? Or what about it did they just simply not understand?
I think where most guys miss, and I would lean this more towards younger entrepreneurs or startup entrepreneurs in the industry, they don't lean enough into working with trades that are doing the type of work that they would like to do one day. I think there's a lot of value in reaching out to people who are already doing it. I think you'll be surprised at how many owners or project managers or people at a larger company are willing to help. I think if you take great interest in the type of work they're doing and, you're able to be part of it in some way or sub to them, get some experience on some larger sites. And one of the things I'd mentioned too is, like, often when we're young and we're starting out, we're so keen to get to this level. I think be careful what you wish for sometimes, because typically larger projects come with a lot more headache if you're not, systematically prepared or you don't have the team to do the work properly. But yeah, back to the partnerships. I think that's one that's underutilized by far too many young entrepreneurs in the landscape industry. I think, and you know how open and collaborative the community is as well as anybody. Most people are happy to help when people are looking for it.
Can you give us a definition here at the beginning of what we mean or what you mean? Like, what's the Kevin Scott definition of a strategic partnership for landscapers? Like, I think that term sometimes sounds a little bit white collar or I don't know, overly fancy. It's like when we think of the environment of a typical, blue collar business or a landscaping business, and we're talking about partnerships, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, I look at strategic partnerships as a relationship, no different than any other relationship. Each person needs to provide something for the other one to want to continue to do things for the other. So it's got to work for both people. There's got to be collaboration. There's got to be good communication. There's got to be support. And I think, through any vertical type of work in the landscape industry, there's partnerships available that can not only help you, but you even in a small way are able to help them. And I think that would be the gist of it. How do you help somebody else do their business better? How do they help you run your business better?
But at the end of the day, like these are people, these are groups or individuals or other businesses in your hyper local environment, because landscaping businesses are hyper local. You're not an e-com business that ships across. You do business with people in a very, very defined geography. So in that environment, these are people who can and hopefully do bring you work that you want to do, or some other benefit that maybe isn't work, but there is at the heart of this some form of mutually beneficial transaction. I'm not trying to sound like a greedy capitalist, but let's call a spade a spade. There's something that you want out of this relationship in addition to the bond and the connection, and that is hopeful. I think in most cases, like you said, 90% of your work is referral. That's kind of what we mean by strategic partners. Yes?
Agreed. 100%. And I think, people want to do business with people they like. So I think, to add to that, it's important to think about how you can help that person before you start asking for help, right? You've got to come with a good plan and a good strategy and create that relationship from scratch sometimes, or nurture one, right? That's another big thing about partnerships that I think people get wrong is they build a relationship, it starts chugging along, but they don't do a lot to really nurture it or make sure they're giving back or take time to reflect on how that partnership is working for both sides. And I think that can be a big mistake as well.
So let's linger on that for a second, because we're gonna the way that I've structured this conversation is you've got kind of 6 partnership types that are, I think, very typical for a landscaping business, and we'll go through more tactical questions and ideas for how to develop and get value out of each. But before we do, I want to linger on this idea of like the value proposition that you offer them as a landscaper. So the question is very generic, like in general, whether you're looking to partner with an architect or a builder or deepen your relationship with a vendor, whatever the form is, how would you encourage people to start thinking about the value proposition that they offer this potential partner? What questions do you think they should maybe be asking themselves? What type of stuff should they be prepping so that when they show up for the first meeting or phone call or lunch and learn or coffee chat, whatever, this isn't just some very self-serving conversation about, hey, do you have leads? Hey, do you have work? And it's much more like, hey, I know that you do X, Y, Z. I've thought of that. Here's some ways I think maybe I could collaborate with you. I wonder if you have any guidance for how to help people prepare for these initial conversations with the various partner types that we're going to go through in a minute here.
I love the idea of just being honest and friendly. Do your research. Nowadays, it's so easy to find out where people hang out, what they like to do, what their kids do, what sports they play, if they're golfers, what sort of charities they're involved with. So I think doing a bit of research, but I think the more important thing, like anything else in business, is being systematic about it. We have a partnership funnel that we use, right? And it gives us touch points, how frequently they are, what they're going to be, whether that's a charcuterie board or a DM on Instagram or a phone call or an email or a lunch or a box of donuts at their office. We try and build, and as a good example, Vast, our landscape architecture firm, that's a company that's at that stage where it's trying to build lots of partnerships, lunch and learns, but we make it very trackable. So all of a sudden we can start to see, okay, well, the system we're using is returning at 10% or 15% or whatever those metrics end up being. But I think just knowing as much as you can about the customer on the first dry run, be honest, maybe you see something on socials that they're doing that you think's cool, let them know you think it's cool. If you have a connection, like finding a connection through a friend that already knows that person or does work with that company, that's also a great way to do it. Hey, George told me to give you a call and reach out. Anything you can do to make a connection at the beginning, I think, is key. And then developing that systematic approach. And when I say systematic, I'm not saying that to make it sound like it's a mechanical thing. I think it's just important to track what you're doing, when your last touch point was, how did the conversation go? Did they suggest, hey, might have a project in a couple weeks? Like making sure that flow is continuous and constantly evolving.
And then last thing I wanted to hit is just, do you have any thoughts around why these are more important now than ever? Like, is there something about the modern economy, the modern market, where lead flow is at, where competition is at, how technology is evolving that makes a very partnership forward strategy something more valuable now than it was even a few years ago?
Absolutely. I can't imagine operating right now without partnerships.
How come?
We'd have nobody to lean on. We'd have no phone calls to make when we find right fit scheduled work. We'd have nothing to lean on to talk with our vendors to look at discounts or terms or be creative about how we can offer more to them and they can offer more to us so that we can price more effectively. We've got mountains of competition, right? There's far less work in the industry, but just as many people doing the work. So everybody's competitive. You're always going to have companies that are trying to do work for nothing. And I understand why they're trying to keep their team busy or their machines busy. So I think right now, if there was ever a time to have partnerships, is probably, there's obviously been other times in history, but anybody who's been in business since 17, 16, they have had likely a steady climb with very little effort. They haven't had to work on a big sales process. They haven't had to worry too much about funnel. They've likely just grown organically because of volume of work. And then COVID certainly took everybody through the roof. And unfortunately, a lot of people thought it would stay like that and didn't really prepare a system for times like this, where partnerships are more valuable than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a really timely reminder. So the best time to have started on these would have been 5 years ago. The second best time is right now. So why don't we go through these 6 categories? I've sort of lined these out. We've got customers, architects or landscape architects, builders or GCs, vendors and suppliers, realtors, and then municipalities. And I thought we'd go through maybe a few questions for each and just you can help the listener, Kevin, get oriented around, hey, who's in my market? What's a priority? How should I approach them? How do I develop and foster that relationship so that it's beneficial for both? So when it comes to customers, I put that one at the beginning because they are probably the most commonly interacted with type of partner we have. And I don't know if people think about it in that terminology maybe clearly enough in their mind's eye. What is your ethos on turning customers beyond just like a transactional relationship into one that is truly collaborative?
Finish strong. You got to finish strong on every project. I think so many of us look at the next project as we get near the end of an existing project. And whether that's crew utilization, there's not enough funds left to do a good job completing, we're waiting for multiple trades, whatever it is, the stronger you finish, the better. Nobody, even on $1 million job, you could do an amazing job for the first 950 grand and the customer thinks you're fantastic and you could blow it in the last 50. You could blow it in the last 3 days. So I think finishing strong would be my number one tip. And I think that's on any project. Outside of that, it's a lot of the usual things: systems, communication, education, teaching your customer about your process, what you do, why you do it that way, how it benefits them, what your warranty's like. I think from the get-go, being able to offer them a welcome package that checks the boxes for the type of work you specialize in and all the little nuances that could be added to it. It's a great opportunity not only to show them that you've thought about all those things, but also that there's all these things available. Because often customers they look at a project for 2 or 3 years and they only see it the way they've been looking at it. So being a good listener, getting to a project and letting them tell you about their project because they have been thinking about it for 2 or 3 years. Don't start making suggestions when they're halfway through it. Let them finish, digest it a little bit, then start giving your suggestions. But I think the stronger, like the question goes, if you finish strong and they are ecstatic about the way the property has turned out, the way you did the work, the way your crews worked, the way the finances worked, they are just going to rave to everybody about you. They're going to talk about how friendly the guys were, how clean they were, the work that was done, how well the pool works, the fireplace, whatever it might be. But you can blow it in the last couple of days.
One of the things that you and I were talking about offline that I think ties into this, and I want you to kind of rehash it for the listeners, is you guys have made this switch to like always presenting your proposals. And I think that's really effective for like just sales and closing in general. But I think it also is super important for setting up, framing the relationship from an early stage as one that is truly collaborative and more of a team thing than hey, I'm just a service provider and you pay me. So what were you guys doing before? What are you doing now? What elicited the change, and what kind of benefits have you guys seen as a result?
So a couple things. A couple of the guys I work with that specialize kind of in projects that are in the 15 to 50,000 range, backyard patio, some planting, some enhancements. I've actually got them doing it now too, and they're having really good results, because even on a smaller project, you can do a Zoom call from your truck. It takes 15 minutes to walk the client through the proposal. And then for larger projects, what tends to happen with our ideal customer, and I'm sure everybody can appreciate this. If a customer of ours that's doing $1 million job has 3 estimates in front of them and they were all emailed in, and we've had great meetings, but they're looking at those 3 estimates together, and the first one is mine and it's 990,000, and the next one is 760, and the one after that is 740. Mine's gone. They haven't even looked at the items. Every customer in that price range does not go through the items, guys. They flip through the pages, look at the bottom, and they try to justify, is that the number I was expecting or not? The total number, not the per item number. So I would say to anybody, and I'm sure most guys who are selling north of $500,000 jobs and $2 million jobs understand that. So walking them through it item by item and explaining what's included, why we priced it that way, what type of materials are being used, any subcontractor issues or alignment, what the warranty's like, and telling them about why that's different, not necessarily from how somebody else does it, but why we do it that way, and really educate them on each of those items and each of those options. Because often, even if you get on a call with a customer and the number is 990 and their number was 800, you already know, okay, well, here are a few suggestions. If you're prepared, you can make some suggestions on how they can get the number down. Maybe we don't need that much lighting. Maybe we do the audio later. There's good access for the entrance. Maybe we leave the entrance for now and just focus on the lakeside. So when you can have that conversation, it just creates confidence. You get another 20 minutes with the person, usually husband and wife, and you're walking through it. I just think it creates this opportunity, not necessarily to sell, but more to educate on why you've priced it that way and what's included.
And customized too. I mean, we live in such a customized world these days where everyone wants to, select their own, build their own, make your own, create your own. Like, so much of what we buy online or what we buy in restaurants or eating out is like, we get to design it for ourselves. I think that there's a part of the human psyche in modern times that's really geared towards that. And I think those presentations give you an opportunity to sort of look at the body language, notice where they're maybe hesitant or pausing, and then say, hey, this is just a V1. Let's make a V2 together. What can we maybe, like, I like what you said, we'll delay the audio till later. Let's maybe wind back on the lighting. And there's actually so much. So not only are you giving them a more tailored price, you're creating a sense of camaraderie early on just by doing that. So that is a real, I feel, an absolute no-brainer. It blows my mind how often people just email out proposals, even for way smaller jobs than $500,000. I would always sit down with someone and go through it. I'd get to the price tag last. I'd go through all of my value building first, all of my question asking first, and deliver that at the end. So that's awesome. Any other thoughts on customers if you move on to architects?
Speed too. I think speed is important when you're dealing with customers as well. They've likely been thinking about this project for years. They finally got the funds to complete it. Don't be the last one in.
Like, in terms of speed to lead, just like move quickly when you get an inquiry from these people.
Design, deposit, final estimate, just get it to them as quick as you can.
So let's talk about architects, landscape architects. Just maybe actually before I ask you the questions, can you just set up like how this relationship ought to work? Like in a perfect world, they're feeding you work and you're building the projects in a way that they're really happy with. Like, what is the symbiotic part of that relationship when it's done well?
Most architects don't want to refer people who do bad work. All architects don't want to refer people that do bad work. So I think it's a combination of the things. I think some of it's confidence, some of it's history, some of it could be customer preference. But I think leaning and building those relationships is one of the key ones for any business owner, especially when it comes to right fit, because often architects specialize in certain types of work. Excuse me, whether that's building or it's landscapes. They have a certain niche, certain type of customer that they work for all the time. And if that's your right fit customer, then that's a great partnership to build. I think, often guys struggle with making relationships with architects and landscape architects because they feel like their time is more valuable than theirs, or that they aren't going to listen because you haven't done that type of work. And I think it takes a lot more persistence to break down that door. And again, careful what you wish for. Don't go in and sell yourself as something you're not if you can't, because often you get one shot with architects. So if they have a bad experience or a poor customer experience, you're probably not getting a call back. And if you are, it's going to take twice as long to mend that relationship as build a new one. But I think the value it brings to them is one, stress, time on site. If you're confident with their work, it's easy to have a quick FaceTime. If you have a question that, even needs a FaceTime, often you know what they're going to say anyway, and you can make the decision on the fly and continue. I think that having your customer communication very high, whether that's through the architect or with the architect, if your customer is happy, your architect's going to be happy. I think if you can find ways to be creative about extras and how they're presented as things are added or changed without feeling like something was missed. Because let's be honest, sometimes on large projects, people leave things out and then decide halfway through that, oh, you know what, I do want the sport court. And we've already built something there that was on plan. But yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to build those relationships. They're just sometimes tougher. They're sometimes tougher to build than the other ones.
What is your actual strategy for landing a meeting or your first job through a landscape architect? I mean, when we do these Q&A sessions, for example, here at LeanScaper, we will get at least a question every week on this. They're so frequent that I've had to filter some out because they've answered it so many times. But what that tells me that this is a very if it's coming up a lot, then it's a pain point. People are obviously, landscapers are really curious and wanting to get in front of landscape architects for reasons that you just described. It makes perfect sense. Is there anything tactical, strategic tips and tricks that you would suggest? Like, what do people need to execute on well to have the highest possibility of actually landing that meeting for the first time?
Confidence is key. Being confident about what you do and how you speak, what you can offer. I think there's a lot of different ways, like we were touching on earlier, rather than reaching out to ask for work, reach out about something cool they built, reach out about not understanding how they built something that you thought was cool, creating conversations around the work, writing your email or the information that you're DMing them in a way that makes them more inquisitive, I think is important. Because honestly, if you find somebody that really will bring right fit work, there's likely more in common than you just wanting to do their work. You want to do that type of work. You want to do a good job of it. You want to impact customers' lives. You want to build things for generations to come. Architects want to do the same. And architects want to see how you value what they do. Because I know for sure that there's a lot of architects that get offended or turned off when somebody gets their plans and doesn't communicate with them or makes changes on the fly. Sometimes it's customer driven. We've been in that situation a few times too. Sometimes it's to create some efficiency from a price standpoint. But knowing that you are going to hold their intent at the highest level throughout the project and be as communicative as you can with them. Because what I see happen a lot, Benji, especially on smaller projects, is somebody hires a landscape architect, but then they're not as involved because often customers don't want to pay them for their management fee or their time on site or for phone calls about adjustments or changes. But I think if you continue to communicate with them and let them know what's happening all the time, it just creates more confidence. It creates more confidence. And ultimately, I had a landscape architect that is without a doubt our best client, and has been for years. It probably took me 2 or 3 years of nagging, and I call it nagging. I was trying to do it without nagging, but making sure I was running into them, making sure I was asking questions about their projects, being as complimentary as I could, sending charcuterie boards, sending cold champagne with glasses on a Friday afternoon.
Right. Right.
Dropping off samples.
You put on a shift on these people.
Sitting in their office for hours waiting for them to come in to present our new welcome package or just hand it to them.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is persistency, especially if you're not the customer or not the trade that's doing their type of work. And I think that's a key.
I think and so actually let me ask you, in hindsight, all that work that went in and all the carry on, and probably there's moments during that journey you're like, man, I just seem like am I coming off as desperate? Like, in hindsight, how many millions of dollars of revenue have they plowed through your business, and was all of that not worth it?
In the past 10 years, it's probably north of 80 or 90 million.
It's a lot of work. And so
it's a lot every year.
Right. So there's a lesson here that I want to highlight, which is in this super modern, short attention span, immediate gratification culture that we live in. This is a lesson for the younger entrepreneurs listening. It's like, things take time. Like, relationships take a couple of years. Your first job with the person that you really, really want is going to take multiple outbound efforts, and don't be sad and confused and frustrated when they don't open the door and roll out the red carpet for you after your first phone call. And I think that there's maybe a timely reminder to people who just get bent out of shape when the speed to lead, the sales velocity isn't as fast as they would want. A lot of the best customers that I've ever sold took the longest to get in the first place. So a good little lesson there. Let's move on. I want to ask you about builders. What do you think it takes to be the preferred landscaper for builders and general contractors? What are they looking for that you can provide? How do you communicate that well? In what ways is it similar to developing that architect relationship? In what ways is it different? Let's maybe unpack this one for a few minutes.
Make their life easier. Whatever you can do to help them and help their customer have a better experience without involving them too much, because a lot of builders don't want to be involved with the landscape, right? They want to be ensured that they're confident in the people that are doing the landscaping, but they don't necessarily want to manage it. Some do. I wouldn't say that's true for all, but some do. But I think they're very similar to architects. And one of the things I would say is a tool, and not everybody will agree with this, but for builders and for architects, landscape architects, building architects, and this has worked for me in the past too, is I've basically done a project at cost, maybe at less, to create an opportunity to show them what we could do, to the point where I reached out to vendors for discounts, and I was able to have the conversation with them that, look, I know we can do the type of work you're doing. We want to do the type of work you're doing. Get us one project. I will do it for cost. And if you're not impressed, I won't bother you anymore. And that's worked great for me 2, probably 3 times at different levels.
Do you think that's a good thing to just be prepared for? Like, should landscapers be ready to do something on a deep discount to get into the good books of a builder for the first time? Like, is that a good outbound strategy? Hey, we'll give you a smoking deal on this one so that you can see what we're capable of. And then from there, that's a classic like land and expand type approach. That would be the word they use for it in software, land and expand. Like it's the same idea. You land the job by giving them a discount. You expand into more profitable jobs over time by ratcheting up your prices to where they ought to be. But had you not made that initial offer at a discount in the first place, you'd never have the opportunity.
I think it's so true. I think, again, it can be a little bit, I don't think you want to do it all the time, but for the right fit builder or architect that does 10 or 12 projects a year and you could end up with 3 to 5 of them, it is highly worth it. You're easily going to make your money back in a year. It's given an opportunity to elevate your team. It gets the team excited when they know there's an opportunity for an improved type of work or an improved type of programming. It's a benefit for everybody. We get more of these right fit jobs, I can pay more. We get more of these right fit jobs, we can do more. We can get better equipment. Like the whole thing steamrolls. So to me, I never hesitate when there's an opportunity. If I have to discount to break a door, I'm happy to do it. And it's also easier the longer you're in business. When you have money in the bank, it's easier to make decisions like that. It's not always easy when you're a startup, but it is certainly a strategy that is highly effective as long as you're prepared for it.
Vendors and suppliers. So these are people that you buy your stuff from. And before we get into how to develop that relationship, can you just give us a more thorough walkthrough of why that relationship is so critical for long-term success? What are some of the lesser known benefits of having a really strong relationship with your vendors and suppliers?
Well, like any great relationship, I think the value is circular. I think you can bring good value to them. They can bring good value to you. And certainly in times like this, being able to reach out to a vendor and reach out and talk about a discount for the season so that you can now adjust your pricing. I think we talked briefly before. We were able, our biggest material supplier gave us 5% for the year. We probably buy a couple $1.5 million worth of material from them every year. We had another vendor that we were able to have a conversation with. And keep in mind, too, when times are like this, your vendors are looking for sources as well. We often, as contractors, we get comfortable using the same people all the time. And believe me, we want to use the same people all the time because they provide great service. We like to think it's reciprocal. But don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to have the hard conversations. It doesn't have to be hard when you have a good relationship or partnership. I think the value and this goes for like subtrades as well. When you have a subtrade and, we run into this often where we have like a massive masonry component or a pool component that's $400,000 or $500,000, being able to say to them, "Hey, Joe, what can you do for us on this pool project? It's a right fit. It's a great customer. We vetted them. They're going to be great payers. We want to get this job done, but we got to come to the table with something." And if you do that for every supplier on a big project or every vendor or subcontractor on a big project, if you can come back to a customer and say, "Hey, I've done my best here. We really love the project. We love the schedule, blah, blah, blah." And then be able to offer them 5 or 10% discount that's not coming out of your pocket is massive. It's massive for everybody. It's massive for your vendors and your subtrades.
What kind of things can a landscaper do to foster that relationship long term? Like, is it just, hey, pay your bills on time and be polite when you're on the yard, or is there other stuff that you think is important?
Yeah, I think supporting them in any way you can, whether that's a charity golf sponsorship or their hockey team their son plays on, or they're having a company barbecue, swag, any type of donation. But not only that, like when they're in need of support, or they call you and say, "Hey, look, I'm not going to be able to get that there for 2 weeks, but look, I'll do this for you." Being able to have those types of conversations are dramatic, right? Like they're dramatic for everybody. And I think as far as the nurturing goes, or the continuation, don't stop because you've built it. Just like in your funnel, we still want to have that continuous, I almost said continuous improvement, but only because it's in my mind all the time now. But you have that continuous relationship building, whether it's a lunch, whether it's a stop in coffee in their office. I think just nurturing those relationships is just as important as building them. And it's much easier to nurture than it is to build.
What are your thoughts on realtors? What role do they play in the ecosystem? What kind of work can they feed us? What can we do for them? Talk about that relationship.
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends on what type of work you do. We have great relationships with many realtors in our area. They're the ones that are selling land. They're the ones that are working with people at the beginning. They're usually the first contact for a new person to the area that's buying property to build, that's looking for a builder, that's looking for a landscape design or a landscaper. So we hold those relationships very high at Muskoka Landscapers. And I also think for companies, and I have one that I work with, and this is a strategy has worked out very well for them. They're a maintenance company. They do about $1.5 million a year in maintenance. They have a great team. They have a great system. And we've connected them with a few realtors in their area, and they go in and they will do highly discounted staging for the realtors. And the deal is that the realtors are referring them for the maintenance. So it doesn't always work, but I would say 7 or 8 times out of 10, they get the maintenance contract for that new owner. So now they're selective about the type of project. Is it in the right area? Logistically, does it suit us? Is it the type of work we do? Does it have the components we like to work on? Is the owner a good person? The realtor's able to vet that stuff for you. They've likely had a really good experience or a really bad experience with an owner, no different than we sometimes do in landscaping. So I think there's a lot of value in those realtors, especially realtors that have high turnover. If you're constantly offering enhancements and staging at really affordable pricing, it's a great tool for people that are going to be the first one to talk to that customer.
Let's talk quickly about municipalities here at the end. How can landscapers work with local governments or public projects? Like what's kind of the pathway to that type of partnership? What have you guys found successful at Muskoka?
Again, just relationships. We probably I'd say 5% of our revenue is municipality or commercial type work. But building those partnerships with people that work in planning, having that communication, being on the vendor lists, being able to look at the right fit work, supporting them when they need estimates for projects that we know we can't do. And then I think from a commercial perspective, building relationships with property managers or people that manage commercial sites is also a great one, because it's the same thing as everybody else. How can you make their job easier? And if you do a good job, you're going to make their job easier. The renewal on the contract is going to be easier. If they like you, getting the contract is going to be easier. Because often with that type of work too, it's not necessarily the lowest price, right? A lot of it's more about capability and systems, and people like doing business with people they like.
I wonder if we can talk a little bit at the end here about an idea that is becoming more and more important as we get so sort of digitized in our lives. Like, I think one of the real advantages of running a landscaping company or running an in real life business, an IRL business that isn't sort of in a computer in a spreadsheet. Of course, there are computers and spreadsheets involved with landscaping, but you are dealing with real human beings working on real properties with real customers, and you're doing it in a very localized environment, like I said before. I think that there's something really powerful about feeling like you're a part of a local community, especially as an entrepreneur. Like I feel bad a lot of the times for these solopreneur tech founders who are building some gadget on their computer from their couch for years on end. Like that doesn't really sound that appealing to me. Can you talk about the importance over the long haul? You've been doing this for decades, Kevin. So you have some perspective on this. How important to sustain the effort needed to build something great, how important having community around you, whether that be customers or vendors or realtors or friendly competitors even that you kind of bid against from time to time, being a part of that like lived experience where you live and where you operate, how important that is for longevity as an entrepreneur.
I think it's massive. Just a side note too, Benji, funny enough, we're, for multiple reasons, we're doing a evaluation with BDO right now.
Like getting your company evaluated? Is that what you mean? Okay.
And had a conversation that we're kind of at the stage now where they're done and they're looking at different things. And one of the questions, they had about 5 different questions that we hadn't fulfilled yet. But the one question was, if I felt that the advertising and promotion portion of our budget would need to continue if I wasn't here, basically. And I thought it was very interesting because probably half of that advertising promotion is donations, golf sponsorships, career sponsorships, college like it's all kinds of different things. But I thought it was interesting that they would think that this conversation was more about if somebody new bought your business, would they still have to do this? Because they didn't feel like they would. And I said, well, why wouldn't you? Like that's the glue that keeps everybody together, having this sort of input and thank yous. And when you go to the events, you're taking your family to events, your kids are sharing in something you donated to, or your friends' kids or your team's kids. All those types of relationships in a community are massive. Like, I don't think they can be underestimated. I think even the smallest partnership holds great value. I would say I have very good partnerships or friendships with competitors as well. Sure, they're competitors, but I think if you look beyond that and you kind of look at the greater good, and there's lots of different things you can look at to shed perspective on it, but sharing in your community, helping your community, being part of your community, sharing in your team's community as well as an owner, I think is a big part of it. Helping them when they come to you to ask for, the kids' Girl Guide cookies or whatever it might be. I just think you can't underestimate what the value is in that community contribution and time spent.
Kevin, I wanna end here. You are one of our newest advisors here at LeanScaper. Talk a little bit about what made you want to do that, and if you can, like what type of stuff you love to work on and advise with other landscaping business. What is your real power zone? Partnerships, obviously one of them, but you can speak about it more broadly.
Power zones, yeah. I mean, I love partnerships. I love culture development. I love system implementation. And I love working with teams. We'll be launching it soon, but my goal is to do 6-month intensives where we have a facility tour where I can meet the entire team. I found it way more impactful. I've only done a few of those. I've done coaching for some time now, but I think our values with LeanScaper really line up well. I think the mission lines up well. I have a lot of the same beliefs as the whole team there, and I'm super pumped about working with all you guys. You guys are all killing it. But my hope is to really work with teams in businesses that kind of bring the team and the ownership together, build systems that work for everybody, and, more importantly, help affect a bigger picture and all the people that those people go home to, which is very similar to the LeanScaper mission. And I'm very excited to get started. We've been working on a lot of different things to implement. But yeah, I'm really, really excited about doing it.
Us too. If you want to learn more about working with Kevin, you can go to leanscaper.com/advisors. I'll link it below, and you can book a meeting with your guide, and you can ask about Kevin Scott and the services he offers. We'll wrap here, Kevin. What is okay? Somebody's listening to this conversation. They're really motivated by it. They're like, he's right. I really need to get going on this partnerships part of my growth strategy. What is like your singular piece of advice for someone to get started on this tomorrow? What should they focus on right away?
Great question. looking with the end in mind. Figure out who those best partnerships are going to be and what you can offer them. Start there. And Lana will have some great support.
Write out your list, write out your hit list, ask Lana and get moving. It doesn't need to be perfect. Don't let don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Progress over perfection. These are all very awesome LeanScaper principles. Kevin, you've said it all. I really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and we can't wait to be partnered with you and excited to see what we develop here in the future.
Thanks, Benji. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.